Hello and welcome to this new video in which we're going to look at how to solve a star battle puzzle. We're going to do this one the old-fashioned way on paper with a pencil, and if you're new to star battle, the rules are quite simple. You have to place 2 stars in each row, in each column, and in each of these bold outlined regions. Now there's a variety of different pieces of logic you can use while solving star battle puzzles. The key realization is that there can only be 1 star in each 2x2 box. So if this is a star, then none of these can be a star. If this central square here were a star, then none of these 8 squares around it could contain a star. The easiest way to start solving star battles is to look for small regions for this region. So this puzzle has a region with just 3 squares in here. So if this square were a star, then none of its neighbours could be stars, and that would mean the 2 other squares in the same region could not contain a star, and therefore we'd only have 1 star in the region, which of course is against the rules. Therefore we know this cannot be a star. I'm going to put an X there, and these squares are stars. I'm going to put circles in just because it's a bit quicker to draw, and so whenever you place a star, you can put a cross in all the neighbouring squares, including diagonally touching squares, and so we've made our first bit of progress. Now I'm going to look at regions of size 4, so there's 1 down here, and since we know that each 2x2 square can only have a maximum of 1 star in it, then these 4 squares here can have a maximum of 1 star in them. Now since 3 of those squares are in the 1 region, then at least 1 of these can. Therefore, there's only 1 other place for the remaining star, so it must go here. And therefore, now we know that 1 of these 2 squares contains a star. So we know that only 1 of these remaining squares in that final column can contain a star. Okay, now let's look at the rest of the puzzle. So if we look at this region here, then we know 1 of these 3 can contain a star, and 1 of these 3 can contain a star. Therefore, this can't be a star, and this can't be a star. If we look at this region here, we can find out something about a square outside that region. So, since we know this region, like every other, must contain 2 stars, if this were a star, then it would mean an X in all of these positions, and therefore there'd only be space for 1 star in the region. Therefore this cannot be a star. For a similar reason, if this were a star, then it would be impossible to place the 2nd star in the region. Therefore this cannot be a star. And therefore we know that at least 1 of these 3 squares is a star, because whichever of these 2 is a star would X out the other one. Now we can do better than that, because the other piece of information we had, of course, from these 2 stars is that we've now completed the row. So whenever you have 2 stars in a row or a column or a box, you can X out all the other stars in that region, or all the other squares can be X'd out from containing stars in that region. So what we have now is 3 squares left, and so 1 of these is a star, and therefore this is a star. Okay, and we're making progress. Now let's look here. So in this region, which has 5 empty squares and needs 2 stars, we know we must have 1 of these 3 squares and 1 of these 2 squares containing the star. So since 1 of these 3 must contain the star, and they all border that square, that must be X'd. And whenever you know 1 of 2 consecutive squares contains a star, that's also very useful, because we know that none of its neighbours, none of the squares that touch both of these squares, can contain the star. Next, if we look at this row, then we see we have 2 empty squares here and 2 empty squares here, so that's where our stars must be, here and here. So again, we can X off here and we can X off here. That in turn means that we can place a star here, since there must be two in the region and these neighbour each other. Now we see that it's useful that we marked earlier on there must be a star in one of these two squares, because although we don't know which one it is, they both belong to column 1, and therefore we know where our two stars are, here and one of these two squares. Therefore we can X off the remaining squares in column 1. Now if we have a look here, then we know one of these, and therefore this must be the other star. We can now complete the column. We've got the two stars. That now gives us a star here. It's the only square left that can contain the second star in this bold line region. Let's put the X there. Now to complete this region we must have a star here, and the second star goes either here or here. In fact, looking at this row, we have to have a star here. That completes that column. Now let's have a look over here. So we know we have these 5 squares. If this contained a star, then it would X out the other 4 neighbours, so that can't contain a star. Likewise, this can't contain a star for the same reason. If that was a star, then none of these 3 could contain a star. Therefore, we know that this is a star. And we complete the column. This row is complete, therefore this is a star. That completes this row. Now we know that one of these 2 squares is a star. One of these 2 squares is a star. Therefore, one of these can contain a star. We therefore are able to complete column 4, which in turn completes the row. And so now we have our second star for this region. Now look at this huge region here. We only have 2 spaces left and 2 stars to place. That gives us our 2 stars for column 9. Okay, and now it's just a case of finishing off. So there's 1 star left to go in this column, 1 star left to go in this column. So that completes that row. And finally here, to complete the puzzle, we need a final star there. Okay, and we've got 2 stars in each row, in each column, and in each of the bold lined regions. And that completes the puzzle. Hope you found that useful. If you have any thoughts or comments or any other solving videos you'd like to see, then please do let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching.